Hi, hello. Welcome to another episode of Isaiah's Newsstand. It's your host, Isaiah Edwards. The date is January the 3rd, 2024. Hopefully, this episode finds you well, in good spirits, and high hopes. As for me, I'm doing pretty good. It was my first day back after my little holiday vacation. Gotta admit, I had to shake off the cobwebs in the first 30 minutes or so, but after that, it was pretty, standard operating procedure. So we love that. Let's see, food corner for yesterday wasn't anything special, just the old pasta bolognese. I like to keep it classic. And yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. It's Wednesday. I'm still getting my bearings on what day is it. But it's nice that we're already halfway through the week. You know what I mean? I love that. It feels like I haven't done anything. But let's see here. Let me go ahead and take my startup, and then we will get into some news. Ooh-wee. All right. Our first story comes from The Guardian. Almost 100 dead in blast at Iran memorial for assassinated commander. More than 95 Iranians were killed and scores more injured in a terrorist attack at a ceremony in Iran to commemorate the assassination of a top general, further heightening tensions in the increasingly volatile Middle East. The explosions came at a memorial ceremony in Iran marking the 4th anniversary of the killing of Qasem Soleimani, the head of Iran's Al-Quds force, and it was not clear whether either of Soleimani's principal regional adversaries, Israel or Islamic State, were responsible for the carnage. So I would say that last sentence is very, interesting to me, just because when I initially had read this, I didn't know, from the coverage I had kind of read up until right now, I was like, oh, I don't know who did this, who is responsible for this. But the idea that it might be, Israel or, IS, that's big. Now, from the nature of it, I believe it was a bombing, and it was a bombing that took place near his grave, like memorial. Okay, I can read. According to the state news agency Urnia, the first explosion occurred 700 meters from Soleiman's burial place, and the second was 300 meters further away. Let's see here. The blast occurred on the roads leading to Golzar Shohada, the Garden of Martyrs cemetery in Kerman, Soleimani's hometown. His body is buried in the cemetery along with 1,024 other people regarded as martyrs, and the site has become a place of pilgrimage for supporters of the Axis of Resistance. I'm sorry, got a little too American. Against the U.S. and the West. Hospitals in Kerman and surrounding areas were put on alert to treat the injured. Let's see here. This was from Mojtaba Zolnori, the deputy speaker of the Iranian parliament. The non-suicidal nature of the terrorist attack in Kerman shows that it is an act of the Zionist regime. We will punish the Zionist regime with a revenge that will have global operational value. So, no one really knows. There's a lot of leaders Vladimir Putin or have you that are showing sympathy for, Iran, their ally, but they're not pointing a finger at Israel. They're not pointing a finger at the Islamic State or, potentially anyone else. They're just saying damn, sorry that happened, RIP. Let me see here. They do reference, though, that, it could just as possibly be, the Islamic State. They have references of doing this in 2017. Let's see. A group of 5 IS terrorists attacked the Iranian parliament building and mausoleum of Ruhollah Khomeini, killing 17 and injuring 43. Tehran has claimed it has stopped other IS attacks inside Iran targeting civilians in public places. They also reference Mossad, which is a Israeli state secret service. So, a lot of fingers pointing in a lot of directions. We don't know as of yet, but if I do, hear anything, I'll keep you posted. But something that they left off here that really jogged my memory when I read it was that Soleimani was killed in a U.S. drone strike in Baghdad in 2020, ordered by Donald Trump, and was seen as the leader directing Iranian proxy forces in Iraq and Syria. His Shia forces, part of the Revolutionary Guards and more powerful than the Iranian Foreign Ministry, were also determined foes of the Sunni Islamic State group. So yeah, I had totally forgot that this is one of the drone strikes that Donald Trump came out and was like, yeah, I had my hand in this, this was the best drone strike ever, or we did it, we got him. He was on that shit and I was like, I don't even know who that is, bro. And it's, for me, this is kind of a little bit of a full circle moment, but I kind of have these with almost every president. It's like, oh yeah, this is the war crime stuff. Because obviously from our perspective, especially how it gets worded to us, is that hey, today in the news, guess what? Americans did a great thing. We calculated and organized this whole fucking strike and we killed the guy. And sure enough, other people were dead, but don't worry, we got this really bad guy, and that's all that you really need to worry about. So, all right, see you later, CNN. And that would be the news. That's the news. And Trump does this, Obama does this, Bush does this, all, down and down and down and down and down. So it's one of those things where it just becomes almost background noise. And I'm sure every country, nation state, whatever, has this fucking issue. But at the same time, when it's done to your country, guess what? It's spoon flipped and it's terrorism now, because that's just how that is. And I really feel like it's important to talk about that and address it and understand that it's you might feel and say and think, okay, Iran bad, they're so bad, blah 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 blah. But if this happened to us, if this happened to any of our allies, we'll be ready to go to war. So just think about that. Just food for fucking thought, right? And we're kind of, bundling our Middle East news here, so let's just keep it going. From Politico, top Hamas official Saleh Arouri, I'm getting that wrong, sorry, who headed West Bank operations, killed in Beirut blast. If you're not familiar, Beirut is in Lebanon, so, Israel should not be doing that. An explosion in Beirut on Tuesday killed Saleh Arouri, a top official with the Palestinian militant group Hamas, and 3 others. Officials with Hamas and the Lebanese group Hezbollah said. Lebanon's state-run national news agency said the blast killed 4 people and was carried out by an Israeli drone. Israeli officials declined to comment. Now, something I didn't mention in the other article is that no one has chirped up, and that is a big deal. More times than not, when these kind of these actions happen, someone claims the responsibility. But sometimes motherfuckers know that they are just going to do the shit and they're going to move in silence on this shit, which is we just wanted to hit you. This is a silent message. We don't care if you actually know it's us or trace it to us, whatever. We're not ever even going to say it out loud, but we hit you. And it looks like, especially in this situation with Israel, they did not care that the fingerprint was on the shit at all. They did not give a fuck. It's our fucking drone or our fucking missile, whatever. We did that shit. We'll do that shit again. And that is a bold statement. And it is the kind of statement that when you have this conversation where, especially when you have this from the U.S. perspective, we're making sure that this is a calculated, contained thing. We do not want this to spread. But at the same time, you're also saying if you're Israel, you're well, we have to get these people. We have to get our pound of flesh, and that flesh has to specifically be top-ranking Hamas officials. They're willing to take that risk and go to those links. And in this situation, that's what happened. Let me see what else I want to read here. Arouri, one of the founders of Hamas's military wing, had headed the group's presence in the West Bank. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had threatened to kill him even before the Hamas-Israel war began on October 7th. The explosion shook one of the Lebanese capital southern suburbs, which are a stronghold of the militant Hezbollah group, which is an ally of Hamas. The explosion caused fire in Hadi Nasrallah Street south of Beirut. The explosion came came during more than 2 months of heavy exchanges of fire between Israeli troops and members of Hezbollah along Lebanon's southern border. So kind of like we've been talking with like the Houthi rebels, who are still active, they're still doing their shit despite the losses. Hezbollah has also been, if anything, Hezbollah's been more ingrained, especially when it comes to like Israel, I feel, in terms of saying like, hey, we are going to fight you. We are going to keep fighting you. And especially since October 7th, they're like, look, until you guys pull out, until you guys stop and cease, we are going to be at your door. But for Lebanon, they've been going through a lot. Their economy's been taxed. Several years ago, there was this big, massive fucking explosion. So everything's kind of been in shit. Lebanon's kind of been in a bit of free fall. But for Hezbollah, they are well organized. They can fight back. They even can say, hey, we have missile capabilities that can shoot even into Israel. And we're not, like, we can hit. Like, we can do damage. Like, yeah, you got the Iron Dome, but we can hit you up. But that being said, does Hezbollah actually want to get into it, go toe-to-toe with Israel? No, they don't. I don't believe that they do. But that being said, they still have this chip on their shoulder, so there's still this tit for tat. So yeah, it is a big escalation for Israel to say, look, we know you have Arouri. We know he's there. He's hiding. We are going to get him, and we don't care what happens. We don't care about any fucking repercussions. So it is a big firing salvo. I'm curious to see if there is going to be any escalation from Hezbollah or any, ramifications or anything from this. Truthfully, I hope not. I hate seeing this shit happen. It doesn't matter what you feel about this shit. I feel like, you don't want to see more and more violence. You don't want to see this shit escalate. You don't want to see this shit fucking spread. So it doesn't bring me any joy to, bring these fucking two stories to you, however you think I feel about this shit, however you feel about it. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's that. That's one. That's two. We have another couple stories to cover. We're moving to the States, but we're kind of staying on the same fucking subject, at least a little bit. From Business Insider, Harvard president announces her resignation. Claudine Gay is out as a president of Harvard after less than a year. 6 months, I believe. Gay announced the move Tuesday in a resignation letter published on Harvard's website. The news comes after weeks of scandal throughout December, including controversial congressional testimony and plagiarism accusations. Now, the controversial congressional testimony, we've talked about that. That was the situation in which I believe Penn U's Liz McGill was fired. There was another president that came in, as well as Claudine Gay, that defended themselves. Some would say that they were too bureaucratic in their answers and that, they were trying to dodge the question, they were being elusive, and that they actually support anti-Semitism in some way. I don't think that was any of these presidents' goals or agendas. I don't think that that's any of these campuses' agendas also, by the way. But I think, and I said this in the previous time we've talked about this, their only original sin here was saying, we have to get in front of this. We have to go to this congressional fucking testimony. No, the fuck you don't. It's not a subpoena. This isn't a fucking government order. There's no gun to your head. You're not going to go to prison. Just fucking ignore it. That's what y'all should have done. Because essentially this was a witch hunt from that, from the get-go. And though it was nice to see Harvard rally around Gay at first, it seems that over time they found more and more things to kind of pick at her about. Apparently there was some plagiarism accusation. I haven't really dug too much in the depths of it, to be fucking honest with you. Some people are like, there's no merit to it. Some people are like, no, there is some. But at the end of the day, I don't feel like any of this is worth, and I don't think any of it's the actual reason. At the end of the day, it's because she went and had this fucking testimony. It wasn't, I deny Palestine and everything they do, and therefore you're supporting anti-Semitism. More or less that's how that rodeo fucking went. At least Stefanik, got her fucking political points on this shit, and of course she's getting even more on this. Other motherfuckers, I think, like what, some alum, Bill Ackman or whatever the fuck. I don't really dwell too much on these motherfuckers. I'm not doing my fucking deep searches on them. But he was crying for their like graceful resignation for after the testimony and all this kind of shit. Blah blah blah. He was getting other motherfuckers who were like big whales for colleges, like big supporters, to like say, hey, I'm gonna withdraw my support if you don't get rid of this president because they're an anti-Semite and they're supporting violence on campus against Jews, which is not what is fucking happening. Let me once again take an aside to really get into this. Yet again, these are situations where, yes, you get into a group and people are trying to express themselves. They're trying to talk about how they feel about these situations and really voice it. And for that, you're essentially attacking them. And then you're using these niche quarter situations where people are going way too crazy and actually being anti-Semitic and saying and doing crazy things and saying, oh, this is the whole movement. This is the whole conversation. This is why you can't say from the river to the sea. Like, fuck that, man. That is so stupid and such a fucking distraction from what's actually going on. And that's fucked up to me. That will always be fucked up to me. And I think that this is exactly what college campuses are for. You know what I mean? And I'm sure people want to do the counter. Well, what if this was like some, neo-Nazi group or some skinheads talking about like how they hate black people or whatever? Well, yeah, that'd be fucked up, and I wouldn't like that. But at the end of the day, they do have a chance to have their freedom of expression, and as long as they aren't actually exciting violence and doing crazy feral shit, then guess what? Sadly, they're in their grounds, and they can do that shit, as long as they go through all the proper protocols and all that dumb fuckery, because that's just how this fucking country works. It sucks. But you know what? In each and all these situations, these campuses are actually investigating these problems and going through and finding people and saying, oh, you can't do this. There's going to be repercussions for this. For the people who are taking it to those extremes. But for the people who are having real conversations about what's going on in Israel, between Israel and Palestine, that should be real. It should not be bumper stickered as just like, you're being racist. You're being an anti-Semite and you're not allowed to have this conversation. Fuck that. That's not how any of this shit should be working. So... naturally her resignation to me is a bummer. Though that being said, it's just like McGill. She's, in a statement on the matter, the Harvard Corp said Gay would resume her faculty position at Harvard. Alan Garber, Harvard's provost and chief academic officer, is set to serve as the interim president. So, it just is what it is. I don't know if there's got a bird coming. Maybe. There it is. I don't know if there's going to be any more heads rolling or anything like that. I guess one more thing I did want to talk about too is like, is this a racial issue? Maybe. I can see it. There's definitely arguments for it in my opinion. I think that Gay was kind of focused on, but you can make the argument, well, wasn't McGill, who was a white woman, she was fired beforehand. You know what I mean? She was facing similar pressures. But I don't know. That's something that, you can say is in the eye of the beholder. I do think it's crazy that, you say you're going to rally around a person, but at the same time, it seems like they were kind of pressuring her out once the pressure was getting too hot. 6 months. That's crazy. That's like way too short of a fucking tenure. You know what I mean? It's fucked up. But yeah, that's, more or less all I wanted to say about that. I feel we'll call that covered. All right, we have one more thing to cover, and it's good news. It's not related to Israel or Palestine in any way, I promise. So that's cool. So yeah, let me take my last break, and then we will get into it. Ooh. All right. Starting with the Guardian, ending with the Guardian. Chinese teenager found alive in Utah woods after cyber kidnapping scam. Now, at first blush, I was kind of annoyed that the news outlets were like making a distinction to say that this was cyber kidnapping and not kidnapping. To me, a rose is a fucking rose. I don't care if you're being lured via a Discord chat or someone has candy in their fucking white van. An abduction is an abduction. but I can understand why they wanted to talk about the nuances here. But a Chinese exchange student who fell victim to cyber kidnapping, in which his parents were extorted for $80,000, was found alive but cold and scared in a tent in the Utah wilderness, police said. Kai Zhuang, 17, was reported missing on Thursday after his parents in China told officials at his high school in Riverdale, Utah, that he appeared to have been kidnapped and a ransom had been demanded. The case followed a typical pattern for cyber kidnapping, in which kidnappers tell the victim to isolate and provide pictures as if being held captive. Photos are then sent to the victim's family to extort a payment. The victims comply under the belief that their family will otherwise be harmed. Now, for me, I was trying to rack my head around, like, what could convince him to, like, do this. And I'm not sure if the people who was talking to him, if they had came as if they were, like, some kind of superior and saying, hey, if you don't do exactly what we say, you're going to be in trouble, or your parents are going to be hurt or harmed or something like that. Like, so I don't know if that was the play. I'm not 100% sure. But there was something that was more or less, it scared or forced Zhuang to say, oh, I need to leave my home, my exchange home, which, by the way, apparently they thought that he was just at home and then they lost track of him. Apparently he was home and then he had disappeared. I still feel like that's a little funky, though, on the exchange parents there, exchange family, host family, whatever. I don't know. I feel like a little bit more due diligence would have at least got people on this a little bit faster. But essentially, well, we can just read it. After analyzing bank records, purchases, and phone data in a days-long search, police became convinced he was isolating in a tent about 25 miles or 40 kilometers north in a large area near Brigham City. So they were able to more or less triangulate him and find him, which is super great. But it's crazy to think, like, you're the person who's being kidnapped, and essentially your abductees or abductors or whatever are telling you what to do, saying, hey, go to the store, get these things, da 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 da. And then they say, okay. And then maybe they pick you up or whatever. And they take you to a place and they say, okay, now you're going to be here. And then we're going to keep track of you. We're going to keep monitoring you. We're going to keep checking in with you on FaceTime and things like that. They also go through the added thing of saying, hey, take these pictures of yourself. And then they use those pictures as extortion on the family. So it's like, oh man, like we've talked about pig butchering and shit on here, but this to me is a new level. And it makes sense, once again, when we talk about the idea that the targeted victims are people that they had to have known that this family had money back in China. And they knew that this is a person who is a foreign exchange student. They are a very vulnerable person. And man, it's crazy once again that like he was able to go missing and then it took like, a ransom note and then a call to the school for like, now we know this person's missing. So obviously very crazy. After being rescued, Kai requested a warm cheeseburger and to speak to his family, who had paid $80,000 to bank accounts in China during the scam, according to Riverdale police. So crazy shit. But at the end of the day, the best silver lining about this is that he was found alive and he's okay. He's well. And I hope he got his fucking cheeseburger. Hell yeah. So yeah, that's the episode. Let's see here. I do have a Patreon if you'd like to help out, support. Become a newsie today. I shout you out at the top of the month. Plug a project if you'd like. And then free ways to hit me up, isaiahnews1@gmail.com. And then you can find me or the podcast on all the socials. Feel free to follow me on them. And also, hopefully, you're subscribed to the YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that bell, leave a nice, cool comment. And you can do that on whatever listening app you're on right now. So, yeah, that's it. That's all I have. Hopefully, I'll see you soon for some more good news. I love you. Bye-bye. Mwah.